Hi people, it's Sarkavist here, and today I'm going to be discussing some more of these E3 trailers we've been seeing as of late. Okay, so first off, here's a trailer of Destiny. It didn't really show us anything new, it just showed us how the game's coming along, lots of different areas of the game. It showed us the competitive multiplayer side, which I personally believe will give the game a very long-lasting appeal. It's got a loot system, another thing that can really keep the lasting appeal of a game going. I mean, I continue to play Diablo 3 to this day because of the loot system. It seems a bit old that I say this with all these trailers now, but we are getting to a point where graphics are just universally excellent looking. They look great here, especially considering this is meant to be an open world game. I'm assuming in terms of the world it's going to be a bit like The Old Republic if you've played that Star Wars MMO, where although each setting is on a planet, you're only allowed a certain segment of that planet to explore. For obvious reasons, they can't make entire planets, that would require an insane budget. Also, if they did that, the graphics probably would have to be reduced due to the sheer size of the world, and I'm hoping that within each planet there are no instance areas, apart from maybe the odd dungeon. I'm hoping it's all one cohesive location. I'm also getting a sense that Mass Effect has played a bit of a part in inspiring the art style of the game, simply because of the futuristic setting. I mean, they're going to look to other franchises for a little bit of inspiration to see what works. There's lots of creative alien designs. It looks like, just from a few snippets, there's going to be a bit of interspecies politics, where maybe one race is threatening to take over the others and they have to use democratic means to prevent that attack. I do get the sense that Destiny is trying to be a lot of things at once. You see some elements from an MMO, you see some elements from an RPG, some from a first-person shooter. It's crazy, there's a lot in there. And if it all comes together well, it's going to be a very fun game. It's going to appeal to everyone in some way. And that's going to be great. It could be a way of bringing gamers together. You could have the guy who appreciates a good story. He comes in and he says, yes, I really like Destiny. The guy who enjoys that first-person shooter action, he comes in. And then you've got the MMO player who really likes to fine-tune team mechanics, getting your gear spec'd completely to the point. Everyone's tailored for. But then again, and this has happened before, if there are too many systems, it could just end up being a bit of a mess. But then again, it's Bungie working on this game. They're a proven developer. If this was a newcomer, I would honestly say I'm a bit skeptical about all this. I think they're trying to promise too much, but we know Bungie. We know they can make great games. Okay, now moving on to Rainbow Six Siege. The reason I originally investigated this game was because I'm a big fan of the previous Rainbow Six Vegas games from early last generation. The parts I particularly loved were the breach and clear scenarios, where you'd have to go into a room, kill all the people inside without taking any damage yourself. You would have to do this by coordinating with either other players or your very intelligent AI. You'd have to use all sorts of equipment. You'd have to use optic nerve cameras, you'd have to use C4, you'd have to use smoke, all sorts of things. It was a highly tactical game. You couldn't mess around. You would die in seconds if you were exposed. And that's why I thought, okay, so what's Rainbow Six Siege about? Well, Rainbow Six Siege is more multiplayer focused. So in the scenario now, both teams are player controlled, which is going to add a whole load of dynamics on top of what we previously experienced. For one thing, as we all know, players are far less predictable than AI. You can kind of actually consider where an AI will move because it's just a logical way of doing things, but players will do things you just wouldn't expect. They might blow a hole in a wall just to get away, whereas an AI probably wouldn't do that. And that takes me on to the destruction side of the game. Not only is this just going to make breaching an area much easier, it's also going to prevent camping, I think. I just envisioned a scenario instantly when I first heard about the game, of the enemy team taking the hostage into a corner and not leaving it. With their shields up, you just couldn't get to them. But now you can just put C4 on the other side of that corner and instantly kill them all together. So it's going to force players to actually disperse and tactically think about where they're standing. Even when I'm impressed with trailers, I try to look for a weakness and I really can't see one. It looks like they've tried to set the game up so it's not exploitable. It looks like tactics will play a massive role in the game. You seem to have lots of options. It just does look like it's going to be a solid game. It's a shame that Rainbow Six Patriots game disappeared, and now this is just... I actually have an idea that this basically was the multiplayer portions of that game and they've decided to make it its own thing. But I am looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun if you're the kind of player who likes to work tactically with other people, and it's going to be a game where the team that's better coordinated will likely come out on top. Leaving best for last, Evolve, a game I am very much looking forward to. In this particular trailer we saw the Kraken, a new monster with the ability to fly. He looks like Cthulhu and he can do a lot of range damage. We also saw a kind of objective based play where as the monster evolves through the different stages of evolution, he can accomplish different objectives. So I don't think it's just a case of the monster having to go around killing all the hunters. I wonder how fun it is to go around looking for the monster in the early stages. I hope that doesn't get boring, because it looks like a game that as it progresses it gets more and more fun, but it may be a little, it's like with an RTS. And the RTS starts with that slow period where you're building up, and then by the end it's armies fighting armies. It's the same thing here. The monster is trying to get resources, and over time it becomes strong, but at the beginning it might be a bit slow. I've noticed with the trailers we've seen from Evolve is that it's a very dark game, and I believe the reason behind this is simply so the monster can hide, because as I say, in the early stages it is very vulnerable, and it would be too easy if it was a very bright sunny day. If you're in open field you'd see the monster straight away, so it needs areas to hide, and that's probably why we see so many dark matches. You might see some maps where it's intentionally made more difficult for the monster to hide, where it's a lot brighter, there aren't as many crevasses for it to hide in. But I mean, it is necessary, otherwise you could just wait for the monster to start feeding and then shoot it. I understand why it's dark. It's a little difficult because I prefer games to be bright, but I can totally understand why they've made it dark. Something this trailer has made me feel better about is the amount of variation in the game. Something I originally felt was that the game would get repetitive very quickly, and that still could happen, but in this trailer we saw, well, not only the new monster, the Kraken, but we also saw as the monster evolves, it can gain different abilities every time you play. So you may go down the ranged route, the melee route, the survival route, what have you. It's a bit like in World of Warcraft, you had different classes, but within those classes you also had different specializations. I would actually go as far as to say that Evolve is probably my most anticipated game of this year actually, based purely on the fact it seems so original. So those were my thoughts on some of the E3 trailers we've seen so far. As always people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.